We are in Broxton, Oklahoma, a town that now lies in ruins, completely destroyed and turned to ash. Thor stands at the edge of the town, quietly staring at the devastation, filled with sorrow. Broxton was once a small and peaceful town. Not long ago, the people of Broxton had warmly welcomed the Asgardians, offering them a place to live and shelter. But shortly after, the god of hammers came and reduced the town to rubble. Thor meets a man on the outskirts of the destroyed town. The man explains that they keep watching the footage from just before the town was destroyed, saying it is the biggest event in the history of that area. While watching the footage, Thor notices something unusual, a strange flutter. Curious, he asks about it. The man explains that the person who filmed it tried everything to get rid of it but couldn't. Thor asks the man if he knows who filmed the footage, and the man confirms that he does. Thor then tells him to contact that person. After that, Thor walks into the man's shop to have a cup of coffee. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is sitting in a park, staring at his phone, trying to gather the courage to call Steve Rogers. The last time he called Steve, he thought the Sinister Six were going to attack him, but it turned out to be a false alarm and Peter had wasted Steve's time. Lost in his thoughts, Peter finally dials Steve's number, but immediately hangs up. He grabs his head in frustration and sits quietly. Elsewhere, Thor meets former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Roz Solomon. He asks her about the flutter that appeared in the video footage. Roz explains that most businesses using video surveillance usually store their footage off-site with private security companies. She cross-checks a large amount of data using the footage provided, and something unusual stands out. Every single active camera in Broxton at that exact moment records the same strange energy distortion. This clearly proves that something significant does happen. However, Thor believes otherwise. According to him, nothing seems wrong, at least not until the god of hammers arrives and destroys everything. But Roz focuses on what truly matters, identifying what the phenomenon actually is, understanding how and why it occurs, and figuring out who allows it to happen. Someone makes the decision for things to unfold this way. Meanwhile, Steve Rogers is at home, sitting on his couch, reading a book. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. He opens it to find his neighbor, Mrs. Rosen, who has come to check on him. She tells Steve that he has seemed alone and sad for the past few days. She senses that something is off, so she decides to check in on him. She gently advises him to reconnect with his old friends, go out with them, and take his mind off things. After she leaves, Steve picks up his phone and calls Peter Parker. Peter sees Steve's name on the screen, fumbles with his phone, and finally picks up excited and nervous. He asks Steve if everything's okay. Steve invites Peter to his place for dinner that night, and Peter happily agrees. Steve sets the time for 6 p.m., but right at that moment, the door opens and Thor walks in. "I need to talk to you," Thor says. Soon after, Steve cancels the dinner plan and tells Peter to come over for work. Peter agrees, but before ending the call, Steve asks him if Thor knows who he is under the mask. Peter pauses and thinks carefully, then admits that Thor doesn't know. Steve quickly tells him to come fast and ends the call. Peter, surprised, wonders out loud if Thor is also there, but the line is already disconnected. 45 minutes later, Spider-Man arrives. Thor shows Steve and Peter the same images and videos taken just before Broxton was destroyed. The flutter is visible in every shot. Thor believes that somehow they might be able to bring Broxton back, restore it exactly the way it was before. Thor speaks with deep emotion, remembering how these people offered him and the Asgardians shelter after Ragnarok and treated them like family. The destruction caused by the god of hammers feels senseless to him, done only to cause him pain. He blames himself, thinking that if he hadn't brought the Asgardians here, this tragedy might have been avoided. Still, he refuses to rest until he brings everyone back. He knows he can't do it alone and turns to Captain for help. Before Steve can respond, Spider-Man jumps in. "I know what that distortion means." Everyone looks at him. "It's some kind of magical restore point." Thor turns to Steve and says that including Spider-Man in this was a wise decision. Then he looks at Peter and asks what the restore point is. Spider-Man begins to explain. He says that a restore point is like taking an image or a snapshot of the computer's operating system at a specific time, a moment when everything is working exactly as it should, perfectly. That perfect moment is frozen in time, so if something goes wrong later, everything can be reset back to that one flawless moment. After hearing everything, Captain Steve says that if there's even a single chance to bring everyone back in Broxton, then I'm in. Thor and Steve shake hands, and Thor thanks the captain for standing with him in this difficult time. Then Thor turns to Spider-Man and asks for his opinion about this task. Spider-Man also agrees to join in, upon which Thor thanks him too and says, "Now we should get moving." With Sif's help, Thor brings Captain America and Spider-Man to Broxton and tells them to start moving in one direction. As they walk through the wreckage, Thor looks around and says that this used to be the town square before it was destroyed. It was a good and kind town. "I wish you had seen it," Captain responds, telling him, "I did see it, Thor." As they continue walking, Captain informs them that before everything went down, he had downloaded the city's street view footage. He says it looks like if they move north, it might lead them to downtown. Spider-Man also pulls out his phone and starts doing the same so they can better analyze the layout of the streets. While scanning the footage, Captain notices a couple and immediately asks Thor who they are. Thor explains, saying the boy is named Bill and the girl is Kelda. She's an Asgardian. Thor adds that he has rarely seen a love as powerful as the one between those two. Bill was a human who left his ordinary life and became a warrior of Asgard. He gave his life, fighting Loki's supporters. Kelda mourned him deeply, but she never stopped loving him. Then, when Karnilla cowardly killed her, she was reunited with Bill in Valhalla. Getting emotional, Thor says that until this is all fixed, my guilt will never go away. Captain America tells Thor that he'll go ahead and take a look around, maybe find something past or present that might help. To lighten the mood, Spider-Man starts teasing Captain in front of Thor. But suddenly, Captain says, "You two need to see this." Looking closely at his phone, Captain says, "There's been a change in the street view footage." Thor asks, "What kind of change?" Captain looks at the footage of Bill and Kelda and feels like the past is somehow aware of their presence. Spider-Man agrees and mentions that he's noticing the same strange feeling. He suggests they should try bringing the image of Bill and Kelda closer into their space to better understand what's going on. Thor gives a warning, but Spider-Man insists that they need to at least figure out what exactly is happening. As Spider-Man studies the image, he turns to Captain and wonders if Kelda is looking directly at him. He asks if Captain sees the same thing. Captain confirms that he does and asks if there's anything else. Spider-Man responds that there isn't, at least not yet. Suddenly, a shadow version of Kelda appears right there and starts attacking Spider-Man and Captain America. Thor calls out Kelda's name, and the moment she sees him, she stops and sits down on the ground. She tells him that she's been waiting for him for a very long time and pleads with him to save them all. Once the situation settles, Captain turns to Kelda's shadow version and questions how she's even present. She responds with the strange truth she exists and doesn't at the same time. She explains that she's both the one who died and the one who survived. Kelda begins to share the painful story of herself and Bill. She says she once believed a certain event would take place, but it never did. Now, she's left confused, uncertain about when it will happen, why it hasn't, how to prevent it, or even who to warn. Spider-Man then asks her again how she's managing to be here. She explains that she can force herself into existence for brief moments, but it comes at a heavy cost and immense pain. Even while speaking, she feels herself being pulled back to that moment and to the danger that still lingers. She recalls how she shattered emotionally, and right after that, Asgard fell into darkness. The Twin City was trapped, unable to move forward or backward, swallowed by a terrifying gloom. After hearing her, Spider-Man says he might have a solution. When Thor and Captain urge him to explain, he brings up the idea of Schrödinger's cat, the theory that whenever someone makes a choice, a new universe is created, meaning the cat is both alive and dead until the box is opened and one outcome becomes real. But then he admits that the newer theory shifts things. According to it, both outcomes do exist, but when a choice is made, the quantum particles that hold those options move backward in time for just a millisecond. In doing so, they erase the path not taken. The choice doesn't break reality because it was always going to be the only choice possible. Captain considers this and says that if every unchosen path is erased the moment a decision is made, then all alternative outcomes vanish. Spider-Man builds on that thought, saying it's like brushing away your own footprints as you move forward, nothing is left behind. Captain interrupts with a realization. If that's true, then the multiverse shouldn't exist, neither now nor in the past. And Spider-Man agrees. Spider-Man thinks this is just a math problem they can solve later, and it isn't urgent right now. At the same time, he points out that if Kelda's spell has kept those quantum possibilities frozen for too long, it's normal for them to start breaking down. Thor tries to speak, warning that they need to act soon, but Spider-Man cuts in, saying the whole system could collapse, and it might even take reality down with it. Thor turns to Kelda and wonders why she still hasn't restored Broxton. Kelda explains that it's now safe to do so because Broxton no longer exists, since the space is empty, overwriting it won't create any problems. But in this version of reality, Asgard and its people still exist. If they move that moment into the present, the people trapped inside dark Asgard will come face to face with their real selves, the parts they thought were gone. That's why Kelda has been locked in a constant fight with them, trying to break through dark Asgard's barriers. Only in that place can they access the restore point. Thor replies, saying they only have one option left. For Broxton to live, dark Asgard must fall. With that, they all step forward as Kelda begins opening a portal. She says, unlocking the door to this stolen moment will take the last of her strength. After they go inside, she'll only be able to help them to a limited extent. Captain responds, saying they'll handle it from there. Once they pass through the portal, they arrive near a large castle. Thor leaps onto its wall and shouts, "You who were Asgardians in honor once may yet be again. Stand aside or be thrown down." Inside the castle, shadow versions of Asgardians hear his words. Soon, Kelda, Spider-Man, and Captain America find a door. Kelda tells them this is the door they need to go through. Spider-Man tries to open it, but Kelda warns him that the door might be guarded by deep magic. Suddenly, a voice from behind says, "It's guarded by more than that." The voice belongs to the shadow version of Thor, who slams Mjolnir down in a powerful strike against Captain America's shield. The shockwave causes a huge distraction. Spider-Man realizes that if this happens again, the whole place could fall apart. Captain America tells him to fight off Shadow Thor while he heads for the door. As Spider-Man struggles to hold off Shadow Thor, he shouts at Captain America to hurry, explaining that he can't hold him off much longer. Cap replies, "If you can't open the door, take down the wall." And with that, he starts smashing the wall with his shield. As Spider-Man barely manages to hold back Shadow Thor, another voice appears. It's the shadow version of Loki, who has arrived to help Shadow Thor. Kelda and Spider-Man try to stop them. Meanwhile, Captain finally breaks through the wall and steps inside. He finds Bill Cobb behind prison bars and immediately understands that this is the restore point. Captain tells Kelda they have to get Bill out of there as soon as possible. Shadow Thor and Shadow Loki try to stop them again. Shadow Thor grabs Spider-Man by the throat. Spider-Man says, "Look behind you." Suddenly, the real Thor appears and strikes Shadow Thor with a mighty blow. Taking advantage of the moment, Captain and Spider-Man pull Bill out from behind the bars and begin escaping. But Shadow Loki blocks their path. Kelda yells, "Take Bill to the surface! It is the only way to defeat them. Leave Loki to me." After a hard fight, Captain and Spider-Man finally make it to the surface with Bill. But Spider-Man looks around and says he doesn't understand. Bringing Bill out should have restored Broxton by now, but it still hasn't. Captain feels like maybe they missed something. Suddenly, powerful winds begin to blow. Kelda appears, stepping through to the surface, and embraces her love, Bill Cobb. The two of them tell each other, "I love you." Amid the howling winds, Spider-Man struggles to see anything, feeling completely disoriented. He wonders what is happening around him. Suddenly, a voice from behind him, Thor's voice, breaks through the chaos, saying that something beautiful is about to happen. With a loud blast, as if the air itself explodes, everything begins to restore. Thor, with joy in his voice, declares, "Broxton lives again." Bill fears that maybe after the restoration, he lost Kelda again. But moments later, the real Kelda appears in front of him. Captain America and Spider-Man smile as they watch the two reunited lovers. Later, while walking through the streets of Broxton, Cap says it feels like nothing ever happened. Everything returned in just a blink. Thor replies, saying that's for the best. These are things no human should ever see or remember. Then Spider-Man jokes, "I was once in a room when Wolverine farted." Thor thanks Captain America and Spider-Man, saying he'll be back soon. But nearby, there's some rye bread that's extraordinary, and he must try it. With that, Thor walks away. Spider-Man and Captain continue walking until they reach a shop. As Cap enters, he asks, "Going in for the rye bread, you coming?" Spider-Man replies, "Right behind you."